There comes a moment when you're doing this job where something will happen you never thought would be possible. And here I am today, sitting virtually beside James Rolfe, or as you know him, the angry video game nerd. Dude, it's a tremendous honor to have you here. Like, I remember 15 years ago watching your stuff as I was still studying, which makes you an older person than I am. One of the GOATs, the OG gaming YouTubers, right into this interview in such a happy situation for me. I've dreamt of something like this, and I'm very grateful that you managed to be here. So,
thank you. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it, as I appreciate your work very much. I really wanted to get in touch and just talk about your experience doing YouTube for such a huge amount of time. Because compared to how long I've been doing it and what I have perceived as the challenges of this work, you have a very long history from YouTube when it was a totally different platform. You went through the whole stretch and you're still here, very relevant and blooming. And I would like to share your experience with the people watching and, of course, get some feedback for myself as well.
I appreciate that very much.
Thank you for making the time. I have a small list of questions. We're gonna just back and forth. You can answer in whichever manner way you want and makes you feel comfortable. And I hope the people watching will enjoy as well. So you're one of the first people to grow in this space, in the gaming YouTube space, right? How do you remember YouTube was back then, and how do you feel it's changed? How different is it after so many years nowadays?
I think it's different, mostly because there's more people on it. YouTube is a lot more mainstream than it was. I think back when I did it, it was just the Wild West. It wasn't really, you know, it was such an experimental kind of thing. Ask me about YouTube back in the day. I just think of small things like how you couldn't even choose a thumbnail back then. You couldn't even, it would like pick an image from the middle of your video. I remember you couldn't post a video over 10 minutes and things like that. Yeah.
YouTube back then wouldn't allow you to make thumbnails.
Yeah.
It's a science nowadays, what kind of thumbnail you'll have so you'll catch the attention of the viewer and all that. And back then it was all like shorts, like it picked a frame and that was your thumbnail. So you lived through that time. It was still pre-Google back in the day, of course, right? It was its own thing.
Yeah, it wasn't Google yet. I don't know who owned it. I guess it was just YouTube.
It was YouTube, I think. Was it more of a community situation, you believe, back then than it is now, that's now more corporate, or it was pretty much the same thing?
I don't know. I mean, I think, yeah, YouTube was a lot smaller then. But I mean, even then, I thought it was big. I mean, it was just like a crazy new thing that came around. Like, you could just put videos online for free. People can watch them and even comment on them. It was a crazy new idea. So I thought that was it. That was just like, wow, this internet just came as far as it could go. This is crazy.
Yeah. It's exactly the same thing as we were playing video games back in the day and saying, these graphics are as good as they get, man. We're never gonna get anything better than this. In the PlayStation 2 era, and now it's like photorealistic, gone to a completely different state of being. What year do you think was the definitive year for your career, saying, from here on, I'm doing this? Where was the start of the journey?
Let's see. Well, the start of the journey, I guess it was really just goes back to childhood, making movies in my backyard with my friends. And as time went on, it just became more of like, you know, this is a career I'm going for. We went to college for it, and then shortly after college, you don't know what kind of job you're going to end up getting. You don't know what kind of you know, offers you're going to get. It's a very unknown time of your life. And then I got some jobs editing videos, and then during all that, I was still making my own films on my free time, and I did the nerd videos as like a sort of a, you know, a little joke. Didn't know how far it would go, and then what do you know, that became like, you know, my full-time job after that. And very slowly very slowly did that sort of just take over, where now I can do this full time and do something that's really fun. So why not? And that's also helped everything else in my life. It's helped my movies. It's helped everything. So yeah, and here I am still doing it. So
how did it feel to receive an email from Nintendo saying you have to change your username and you can't be Angry Nintendo Nerd because we're upstuck Japanese developers and we want you to stop?
You know, we never actually, that's a better story, but we never actually did hear from Nintendo. It was more of an assumption that, like, well, we shouldn't change. Yeah, it was more of a conscious decision. Like, we all, like, Screw Attack and I all had to talk about it. Like, well, you know what? Now that we're going to start selling merch and everything and taking this farther, maybe we shouldn't have Nintendo in the title, like in the name, you know? So, and also at the time I was like, well, I'm going to move on to more video game consoles as opposed to just NES. So why don't we call it the Angry Video Game Nerd? And that's where that came from.
Okay, that's something I didn't ever imagine happening. I thought, like with so many other, you know, trademark infringements and all of Nintendo's actions throughout the year, with like an email or a lawsuit saying why you saying the name, you shouldn't be doing that. That's our thing. Okay, so it was much more simple to transition to something universal to be able to cover a broader spectrum, let's say.
Yeah, and for that very reason you mentioned, that's why we made a preemptive decision to, you know, to change it. And this was back in 2006, so even then Nintendo had the reputation.
Yeah, well, for the biggest amount of time, you weren't able to stream their games because you take a hit on the music side of the equation, and the vid would get flagged and demonetized because, you know, Donkey Kong music would be in the background. A wild state of affairs,
so
but
if you ever wanted to listen to the Donkey Kong soundtrack, then, well, you don't gotta buy it. Just listen to somebody commenting over it in some video. It doesn't really.
Sometimes we do like beatboxing of the Super Mario theme on my streams, and we're like, are we gonna get a flag here because we reproduced? Like, you never know, man. Big corpos, they are unpredictable.
Does it seem to you like Sony and Microsoft go about it differently? Because I noticed on like the new consoles, on the PS5 especially, I've noticed that there's a feature where you can record your gameplay right there on the console. So is it more like they feel like if you record it, you're helping getting more attention to the game and more people might want to buy the game, whereas Nintendo is like no, that's ours.
You're abusing our stuff. It's totally different, actually, because Microsoft and Sony, since the previous generation, had built-in recording, editing, and streaming features on their consoles. Microsoft didn't handle it as well as Sony. Sony's totally open-ended about it, both for YouTube and for Twitch. For them, it's like free advertising. The amount of games that my channel has suggested to people that they might have liked and gotten. I'm still pretty small. I'm still a small growing channel. But if you play a game with millions following you, dude, you're selling their ads for free to everyone. Only Nintendo had that archaic notion of if the sound is played online, something of our thing is given away for free. And that brings me back to a discussion recorded between Reggie Fils-Aimé and Miyamoto. I think Reggie was Nintendo of America. Miyamoto is the legendary developer of Super Mario fame. And Reggie was like, we have to give them Wii Sports with the Wii so they know what they'll be doing with this console. And Miyamoto fought him on this. He was like, we're not gonna give away our software for free. Of course, it's history now that Wii Sports made the Wii the juggernaut sales-wise that it became. But he had vision about it, whilst Miyamoto was very traditionalist about it. It was like, no, they have to buy the game, they buy the console and they buy the game. So Nintendo has always been a bit tight about such things. They kind of eased a bit now, but yeah, it's still not as Microsoft and Sony are doing it. They're totally open about all that stuff.
Okay. Yeah. That's interesting because I couldn't imagine Wii without Wii Sports. That was even to this day I still enjoy when I play the one on Switch. But that was a game that I got a lot of years out of because it was such an easy thing. Anybody could play that. You could play it with family members, young and old. Like everybody gets the idea. You know, bowling, go like this. You know, baseball,
Yes.
go like this. It was such a intuitive thing. Um,
The
but yeah,
intuitive aspect of it is how you pitch the console, how they sold the console, because no one would understand that we go from this to, let's say, the Red Steel games or the Dead Space game they did for the Wii. It was a transitional point explaining to you how you'd use this system. Without Wii Sports, people wouldn't know what to do with the Wii, you know? It was the baptism by fire, as they call it, of getting to know the system. Baptism by fire, or I don't know, maybe some other kind of watery substance that isn't as violent because you know it's for the kids. So, YouTube used to be rawer, a much more raw platform, not as much censorship or control. The Wild West, as you very precisely called it. Do you think that because back then there wasn't as many creators and people on the platform, it was easier to grow, much more room to grow than it is today, where everyone can just log into YouTube, like upload something, and you have to compete with everyone else?
I think so. Yeah, it's very saturated now. There's so many people on YouTube where maybe it must be harder. If you're starting now, I would imagine it's got to be harder to get as many views. So, yeah, that definitely changed a lot. But I've been like the same the whole time. I kind of just carry on with what I'm doing, so I haven't really paid as much attention. I'm just like, well, whatever it is, as long as I'm still making my content, I'm still doing my thing and doing it exactly how I did it all those years ago. I'm kind of just aware of all the changes on YouTube, but I'm still just trying to just stay the same, you know.
It is very impressive because for you, it's like a tunnel vision thing, as you say. Like you move forward, you look forward, and you do your thing that you love doing. Do you have like pristine memories of your productions? Let's say I remember specific lines from some of your vids from like 2009 Bible games and stuff like that were some of my favorite vids. Do you still remember like some of those lines and the scripts behind those vids, or it's such a bulk of you know, of video and editing and all that it kind of slips the mind after a while?
Yeah. There's and forgetting things is a very healthy thing of the mind, because you are supposed to forget things as you do new things. But I do actually remember a lot of quotes and a lot of things from the videos, and I'll rewatch them a lot too, especially if I'm making a video where I'm like, this is going to be like a console review, for example, and I want to look at some of my old console reviews and see how I went about it then, and you know, so I'll do like callbacks, or I'll bring back a certain kind of rant. Like there was in the Atari sports episode, there was a rant about football, and it was like, the game's called Football. It's nothing more on it, just goddamn fucking football. And and then I brought it back in episode 200, which we had to post in 3 parts, but it was like a feature-length episode. But the one with the sports in it, where I'm doing all the LJN sports games, I brought back the football rant and had like an updated version of it. So a lot of times I will sort of like continue those sort of things.
I remember that. I don't even know what collection you were reviewing. It was apples falling from trees, and you were trying to grab them, and you did like a Texan accent, like, damn apples falling down from the tree so fast. Man, I pissed my pants back in the day with that shit. Me and my best friend would just recite it randomly, and we were having such a blast with those episodes. And what really strikes me as odd, I remember what was the name of the game? It was like a magician, in an asymmetric grid that you did a huge production about. You had like the cloak, the dungeon with the spider webs. What was the name of that game? I can't quite remember.
Yes. Oh, the Immortal, yeah.
The Immortal, dude, that was masterfully done. And when I watched some of these more recent productions, and I'm like, he didn't get bored of it, you know, because burnout is a very, very important topic about doing this kind of work, you know. After a while, it all kind of, you know, bleeds into each other, all the effort and the productions. You become tired, you need to clock out at some point to catch your breath. Do you ever feel like you need to take an extensive break to catch your breath?
Like while you're in production, like to stop?
Yeah, like say I'm gonna take a sabbatical for 6 months.
Yeah, never that long. I mean, I know like I'll finish an episode and then, to be honest, pretty much I usually just go straight to the next video. Even if it's not a nerd episode, whatever the next video is, I'm kind of always working on something. I guess that's kind of like an addiction, or maybe it's, you know, not as good of a thing. You should take a break. That's very healthy to do. I have a pretty like solid work schedule right now where it's 9 to 5, like Monday through Fridays. So I get like a 40-hour week pretty much, which is a normal type of work week. So I think that's kind of been really healthy, because you know, sleep is important. 'Cause, I mean, we've all been there, right? We've all been there where like you're not sleeping and you're all like just working all through the night and everything. But it's sickening. Like, it's not good. Like, then you start having health problems, and you know. So, yeah, no, you're right. It's a good point. It's good. You got to take breaks.
Yeah, I totally understand, because you've always done this comedy kind of approach to your work. I used to make guides initially, and one of my biggest breaks was Elden Ring that came back in 2022. And I remember, like, between playing to record the footage and edit the footage, it would like 18 hours a day. And then till you try to get like a bit woozy to fall asleep, it'll take another hour. Then you wake up the next morning, quote unquote morning, because the schedule's getting messed up. You need half an hour to get a sip of coffee, and then the entirety of the next day is again the same thing. Doing it year after year, it can get pretty exhausting. So that's why I want your take on it. Like, how do you manage the workload after so many years of doing it? The long form videos is something I wanted to discuss. You've made some pretty chunky vids, like an hour, chunky, let's say. Yeah, an hour plus. But in this day and age where we're considered the boomers, like the old farts of the industry, there is a huge demand for short form content, like the TikToks and the shorts and the reels and all that stuff. Do you feel like demand for long form is waning, or if there is still as much demand for this but also demand for the new thing?
That's a good question, and I don't really know the answer. All I know is when I make my videos, I make them how I think is the best way to do it. And usually it's some kind of deep topic, or it's a review of something where I want to be in depth. I want to talk about everything I want to talk about. So sometimes it's actually very hard to keep the videos short, because it's like, oh, I have so much to say about this, you know. And I do think about that a lot. I always wonder, like, do people like videos that are longer, or do they like ones that are shorter? Because that makes sense with all the TikTok and shorts and everything. Today's audience is probably a lot more scatterbrained, because if you got all this content coming at you everywhere. And back in the day, I know I used to do 2-parters, sometimes even 4-parters. So I would break the video up into like multiple parts. Usually we find that whenever you do that, usually the second part doesn't get as many views as the first one, and the third one not as much, and so on. So usually nowadays I'll like, rather than releasing 2 videos in a month, that where it's kind of like, you know, Atari Jaguar part 1 and 2. Now it's just going to be like you're getting the whole thing like at once.
Okay, I have to know, bro. You have to be totally honest with me here. Are you actually destroying all those games?
Oh, it depends. Like Yeah, because I don't really like destroying games just for the sake of destroying them, like especially if it's something that you're not going to find again.
Or if it's Matt
So,
McMuscle's cartridge and he's gonna come after you.
oh yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, like there's some instances where like yeah, you see the card like we threw one in lava, um, and that was like
I remember that, man.
yeah. So we don't have any volcanoes here, so we had to find it. We had to get somebody else to shoot that, but that was really like the real thing melting. But sometimes it won't be the exact same game. It'll be like, let's get a cheaper cartridge, something that there exist you know, millions of or
In
whatever.
abundance, yeah.
Yeah, and then print out a fake label, put that on there, and it sometimes even looks identical. Sometimes it looks better because it was just printed today as opposed to 30 years ago. And then other times it's something that's already like on its last days. Like I remember there was a Super Nintendo that I broke in the Mario 3 episode because those things get really brittle if they're in the sunlight, I think. So we had this one that was totally yellowed and it was just becoming like very fragile to the touch. I'm like, well, if this thing's gonna go, well, I might as well just crush it on video. So.
Well, I know you didn't take a dump on that Jaguar CD console, but
Oh, yeah.
it was some kind of chocolate, I suppose, some kind of smoothie, but that thing pretty much got wrecked. It's never gonna function again. Did those Jaguar CDs never work for you? Like none of all those?
Oh, I eventually did get one to work. I had to try multiple consoles. So yeah, that one which we shit on was like not very which it wasn't going to work anyway. And actually, I don't even think that the shit even probably destroyed it either. It probably has a better chance of working after being shit on, to be honest.
I remember the analysis you were given, like I hot wired everything, it has a will of its own, it doesn't want to function, dude. The writing was chef's kiss on that, like so good.
Yeah. And after you do get one working, there's not really much on there anyway. Like even to make an episode on, because they're just very unremarkable. I'll put it.
Atari sure has a very colorful history when it comes to their hardware. Now that we're talking about the old, we throw it into lava, we take a shit on it, that's all very Life of Brian kind of humor, it's from another era. Do you feel like we were the nerds of our time, let's say in the 35s to 40s, 40 something, and that now the humor that we sometimes employ is kind of out of touch with the younger audience?
Maybe. I always felt like I catered towards my age group, but I've learned that doesn't really matter, that there's many generations that relate to these games, even when they're old games. Yeah, I don't really worry too much about it being lost on younger viewers, so I just do do what I do.
Yeah, we cater to the people who want to watch what we're making. After all, you can't keep them all happy, neither will you disappoint everyone, so it doesn't really matter. Okay, so the core material of the AVGN show, shitty games, right? You played some dog puke quality games in your time, and we're talking a huge portfolio of the worst, like the biggest money grabs of the 80s and 90s. You went through them all, as well as some games that were not bad but very challenging, like Battletoads or Ninja Gaiden. I remember that Ninja Gaiden or Gaiden vid with a ninja. Who was the ninja, by the way? Was it Matei? Who was the ninja in that vid?
Oh, Kevin Finn.
Okay. Very good ninja impersonation. Did you always enjoy playing shitty stuff so it became like an anecdote for you? Or was it the character that brought them in and you just had to stomach them to create the content?
Oh yeah, I just enjoy playing shitty games. It's just what I do.
I come back home from work, what I'm gonna torture myself.
Yeah. What am I gonna torture myself with? Yeah. No, it was just like I don't really know exactly if it was sort of like, did the character come first or it was more the game? It really was just playing the games in college. That was pretty much all it was just when I was playing it in college, and we'd play an old game. Like I specifically remember we put Simon's Quest in, and we were playing it like, oh, this is this great game we remember, but we were playing it with a very new critical perspective, where we were like, oh, you know what, maybe this game wasn't as good as we remembered, and there's just lots of shitty things. We were just joking about random things too, like why is there a staircase that goes up to nothing? Why would that ever exist? And we were just laughing and having a good time, and we would do that a lot. And during that, I would sometimes, like swear at the game. I'd say like, shit in God or something, and then they're like, shit in God. Like I haven't heard anybody say it like that. So I kind of remembered what would work or what would make them laugh the most, and I just put that in the videos. And so the persona definitely came from just specifically the college memories of replaying those games.
Do you feel like it takes a toll? Because from my side of the equation, like to play the game, to make the guides, to stream whilst other people are watching, sometimes it takes a toll. I remember we played one of the biggest stinkers of 2023, Redfall, came out on the Xbox and the PC. It was like a total miss for Microsoft, like a total tear, the steaming pile of dog shit. And it was 4 streams worth of content, and after that I was like, I need to take a shower here because I'm disgusted. People who watch you play the crap are laughing and giggling, but deep inside you're hurting and bleeding. Do you think like after playing all that crap, like at some point it's like, let me play something good to heal my soul, to come back to my senses? Have you ever felt like that?
Play something good to heal my soul. Yeah. Yeah, I remember after playing the Mega Man games, and a lot of the shitty Mega Man games, and I did that really big review. That was a huge one. I think at the time that was like the biggest, the most hours spent on one single video. And then right after that was done, I'm like, oh, I need a break. I need to like go do something else. I went out and I took a bike ride. While I was riding my bike, I started thinking about Paperboy. And then I was like, oh, next episode is going to be Paperboy. So I can't even turn my brain off. I'm always just thinking about the next thing.
Do you have a definitive favorite game of all time? Like one you go back to and just, immersing yourself, you feel good, it chills your senses, and it brings back all just good memories?
Oh, yeah. I mean, Link to the Past, I've always said is my favorite game, because at the time when that came out, that was like the biggest game that I ever played. And I never played an adventure that was so in depth, and there were so many different, dungeons to solve, and just like the sound effects and the music and all those little things you do, like with the dash move, and you sort of dash just to go faster sometimes, and then you just bump into some plants or something, and it's just something about the way it responds is just really cool. So that's usually the one that I think about. But do I go back and play it all the time? Like, not that often. It's more like a sacred kind of experience if I am going to go back. Like, maybe I'll revisit it again some year, but if I just want something quick to play, I might go to like F-Zero or Street Fighter or something from the 16-bit era. And something that's a little more short term, where you can just play a few rounds and then, move on.
Drop in, drop out, just for a quickie.
Yeah.
I have a question that's more like the chicken or the egg kind of equation.
Yeah.
Do you think that the nerd was like the bones of your career and Cinemassacre came on top of that and had room to grow, or Cinemassacre always the focus of what you wanted to do, and the nerd kinda happened and sidetracked you a bit?
Yeah, because it was always Cinemassacre existing first, if you want to look at it that way, that it was just Cinemassacre was around so much longer, but the nerd is kind of just like under the Cinemassacre umbrella. I think it's kind of just like one of the eggs that hatched, but it became like the biggest one, the biggest chicken. That's just shitting all over the place. But
overshadowed the hen, like it was the big dog in the pen.
Yeah, The Big Dog AVGN. Yeah, next episode I'm changing the name to Big Dog AVGN.
Have
Chicken.
a small animation of your face on its anus, like pulsating like this.
The egg hatches and then it comes out.
By the way, do you game as a means for entertainment? Like, do you just say, I'm gonna sit down, I'm gonna play a video game? It's something that you do for your own entertainment at this point, or is just done, to produce the content?
Usually for entertainment, like, well, you're talking like when I'm not making an episode on it.
Yeah, just chill, play something, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just gonna chill, play something. I mean, if I'm either playing it with the kids, so that'll occur like in the the daytime or early evening. We'll play like Mario Wonder or there's a good Yoshi one, Yoshi's Crafted World, Luigi's Mansion. Like we play a lot of those Nintendo games. Mm-hmm. But sometimes if it's like, when the kids go to bed and like I got like, a couple hours, watch a movie, that's usually what I'll do. I'll watch a film. That the movie has an end time, right? With a game, you might be losing sleep. You might get addicted. Like what I've been playing sometimes is Spider-Man 2 on a PS5, because I just got a PS5 recently, and I noticed that Spider-Man 2 game came with it. So I was like, well, let me try this out. And I'm like, oh, yeah, this is good. So I get addicted to that game sometimes, and I'm like, okay, look, I got to stop. I got to go to sleep, because this is like, this is getting way, way deep. But luckily, they make it easy where you get those, save points, those auto saves all the time. And you can even put the console to sleep right in the middle of like almost anything. So it seems like it's not like back in the day when, when you're playing Final Fantasy 3 on Super Nintendo 6, you're like, there might be a long like stretch, like 30 minutes, where you can't save, and if anything happens, then you're gonna have to be doing that all over. So that's an improvement. I think they definitely improved that in games lately.
Yeah, ease of life. Insomniac, you just got endorsed by the nerd out of nowhere. Like, he thinks highly of your Spider-Man 2 game. Lucky you. Let's take it a bit on the sustainability part of the whole thing. Do you think that as YouTube operates right now, it's sustainable if you want to do it full time on platform, like out of the ad revenue, for example? Or as these things get more streamlined from the corporate side of the equation, you have to find other means to make it functional, like sponsorships, collaborations, and all that?
Yeah, exactly like you said. Nowadays, it's more sponsorships because YouTube doesn't pay as well as they used to. So that's definitely changed. But yeah, I mean, I wish it was the way it was before, where the ad revenue was enough to support you. But this is your job, and you don't want to be looking for another job, because this is like the best job ever. So of course you want to keep doing it. So yeah, it's been a lot more selling directly to advertisers, and so what, you gotta make a little commercial in the beginning, then you get to do your video, and the sponsor has no say over what you do in the video, where I mean, like, they're not telling you what games to review or anything like that. It's not like the sponsor has no influence on your actual creative output. So as long as you still have full creative control, then it's all a win.
Yeah, it's a huge weight off your shoulders to say, like, I made what this piece of work's worth from the get-go by putting the ad in, and I don't have to worry if it's gonna get effed by the algorithm or people will watch it for whatever reason. You can just be at ease, because one thing that people, I don't think, understand is no matter how big the channel is, because, for example, you live in the US, okay? I live in Eastern Europe. Your cost of living there is exponentially bigger than my cost of living here in Eastern Europe. The ad revenue you get there is higher than what I am getting, but the analogy is not favorable necessarily because of the cost of living. So being able to somehow make it work, even if it's not reliant on YouTube, it's a huge part of making the business viable, and it's both the advertisers and the support of the community, I think. Was there like a golden age years back where YouTube was really profitable on its own, like the ad revenue was so good that you said like, okay, out of the ads we can make a living here? Can you place it maybe chronologically?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think we didn't even monetize the channel till a little bit later. Like it was more like 2013. So all my revenue came from Viacom back then, from game trailers. So we didn't monetize. I remember it being a little bit difficult to monetize because they didn't want to monetize it because of the cursing. So yeah. So back then we had to figure out, you know, who to go through, because it isn't even like, you don't even go through YouTube directly. You go through another entity to do that.
The MCN, so the multi-channel network, as they're called.
Yeah, so that's what you have to monetize it. If you're not like, I mean, because I think the other way was like YouTube partners. Like you had to be like, there was that whole thing. I don't think we ever did that. It was always the MCN, right?
So you work with game trailers, as you say. They're non-entity at this point. I think game trailers.
Oh, yeah. That was Viacom, and I went through. Basically, I had Screw Attack, and then they worked with game trailers, and then they worked with Viacom. So it was kind of like down that line. Then I had Spike TV, who would pay me for the movie reviews, and Spike TV was also, I think, Viacom. So it was all that. Now I work with Screenwave, which is a much smaller like company than like Viacom. You know, they've been working with them since like 2009, 2010. 2013 was when they helped with the YouTube channel to finally get, you know, some income from that. But before that, it was all just direct checks from Viacom, basically.
Screw Attack, man, that brings back memories. Isn't it amazing that a whole thing that people could watch was named after one attack from Samus's arsenal in Metroid?
Yeah.
Dude, things were so nerdy back in the 90s and early 2000s. We got diluted as the time passed, man. Like, we're losing our identity here. One thing I wanted to lightly touch upon is you are now a parent, a married man in your 40s, if I understand it correctly. And there has been, how should I put it? There has been a very small but vocal minority talking about how you don't over-edit everything anymore. And why does he do that? And there was so much drama and so much grief, and they were like shredding their clothes and stuff. Why do people go to such lengths to whine about the fact that the creator they supposedly love found things in life that make him happy and thus had to create a more streamlined schedule to make everything fit? How do you feel about the entitlement of the audience?
I wish I could make some sense of it, but what you're saying, it is a very vocal minority, which is very true, because I know it represents, like, we're talking less than one percentage of the fan base, not even like a 0.5% or less. So because 99.9%, I would say, people who come to me are very positive. So I want to speak to them. I don't want to like focus on that, obviously, like you said, but like having kids, having a family, I mean, I don't, I work very reasonable hours. Like I said, you know, I work like 40 hours a week. Generally, I work 9 to 5 weekdays, and I watch the kids nights and weekends. So if you're spending that time with your family, nights and weekends, I don't see that being unreasonable. So like, why, you know, what, even if I worked all day, even if I worked 24 hours a day and didn't sleep or anything, there are some people who would not care. They would still think somehow that's not enough. So I don't know.
I think it's the same situation with people no-lifing, let's say, Diablo or any other video game. Like, people who sit in front of the screen all day just toiling away at the grind, and a week later they start posting online towards the developer saying, there's not enough game here for me. What the hell is this? Dude, you played 300 hours in X amount of available time, like how much stuff did you think would be on offer? And you kind of answered my question. I'd like to ask, like, it's ultimately a conscious decision to keep a healthy life to work balance when you're doing this, because you can get lost in the grind as with every other aspect, but after all these years you could say that you found a pretty healthy balance between the two.
Yeah, absolutely. And you actually touched on something interesting there too with Diablo. I never heard that, but you're saying like people usually want more, which that would make sense to me. That always used to make sense to me. Like, oh, people want more, so you know what? Let's give them more. Because I try to make everybody happy, which you know is impossible. You can't make everybody happy, but I try to. And I used to try to, because in 2021 I put out the most nerd videos I ever did since 2009. Unless you want to count the 12-part Christmas episode, which was 2014, I believe. So it was like the most nerd episodes in a year that I had done. And there were some people that were just not happy with that. So then I decided, well, you know what? I'm going to make less nerd videos in a year, but I'm just going to like focus on those and make those ones really, really, really good, right? I mean, I don't look, but from what I hear is like there's some people that still aren't happy with that. So the point is, if you know you're working your ass off, if you know you're doing a good job and you're enjoying it and you think you're making a great episode, just do what you do.
Yeah, man. The quality of the work is ultimately its own reward, I think. Like taking a step back, looking at what you're made and saying, well, I did the best that I could with the time and resources available, and I'm happy with it. Because I remember about maybe 10 years ago, you made a vid and you were like, I have to make a choice between Massacre and the Nerd, because I can't fit them both into the schedule. And at the end of the video, you're like, you know, I'm gonna do both because I don't wanna leave any of them there to stagnate. And you've been keeping up and doing a good job. We're ultimately human, you know, no matter how big the audience, you have to take care of yourself or you won't be able to take care of the work. And I don't think anyone would ever benefit from you being unable to do the work, because then we'd have nothing to watch. And I want to talk about the importance of creators like you. I've been very fond of your work. Now that the interview is over, I could just take a huge shit on you, but because I genuinely like you, I'm gonna talk positively. And I remember I was doing a shit job back when I was like 20 years old, 21 years old. I was working a net cafe. I don't know if you have something analogous to this in the US. It's just spaces with PCs where people gathered and mingle and play video games and stuff. I was working night shifts and it was pretty much dead hours. There was nothing to do. Dude, I binged the hell out of your episodes back in the day. It kept me sane. So people who come out people who come out and are negatively vocal, I'm talking to you, dear viewer, okay? You come out and be vocal about how a person is managing their workflow but are still providing what you like watching. A little bit of positivity towards the people who work and toil away to provide the content, because if they weren't there at all, you wouldn't be watching anything, man. A little respect and love towards the people making this shit, and everyone will be happier. So, James, don't want to take any more of your time. This went on
Very well said. Very well said.
Thank you. I am wise beyond my years. What?
Yeah, I'll also question, you said at that time you were 21. When would that place that? Like, how old are you now?
I am 36.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, younger than me.
Yeah. Slightly.
Yeah.
It's not like you're using a cane and I'm flying around, but
yeah. I'm using a cane.
I'm not spring chicken 40s, anymore.
Like, yeah, being in my 40s, like, it doesn't feel any different, to be honest. So
I think the big leap, or rather the big fall, comes after like the 28 to 30. You still you feel the back pain. You feel like getting out of bed is harder. 30 to 40, the transition is.
Glasses prescription gets a little, stronger.
I'm trying to look cool. I'm not wearing them, but it's been straining to read the questions. Thank you so much for the time you allocated to this interview. I hope in the future we can do another, maybe something exciting happens. For all it's worth, your work brought value to me and my growing up when I wouldn't have anything interesting to do, being stuck at work or whatever like that. And I am extremely grateful. I hope many people share in this sentiment. Best wishes to you and yours, my man. And I hope I'll see you soon again.
Oh, well, thanks so much. This was awesome. And I'm glad this is the first time I talked to you where it wasn't 4 a.m. your time.
Yes, the things I do for my art, people. So thank you so much for watching, peeps. If you have any suggestions, comments, or questions for James that I can relay to him, only appropriate stuff, please, because you know, our boy's a father now. Leave them in the comment section below. And until next time, be well, stay frosty, and always travel perfection. Cheers.